Here we go.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Morhonda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught! Jelani Woods! Touchdown! INDY!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up. Got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Welcome aboard, everybody, to another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday, October 1, as we have reached the start of the new month. Appreciate you being with us. Planned today, I think, Greg, I forgot we were doing it by phone instead, so it was a late phone call to our friend Greg. Greg, are you there, by the way?
I am here, buddy. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fine. I apologize for my late memory. I'm like, oh my, we're doing it by phone. I forgot. But yeah.
I'm from Southern Indiana, so my technological understanding is a bit slower than most, Jim, so I apologize.
Obviously, my mind's a little slower than most, so I fit right in there with you, sir. How are you?
I'm great this morning. Thank you. Hope you're doing well yourself.
I cannot complain. Unfortunately, I was at the Colts game yesterday, and what a charge by the Colts in the second half. They're down 23-0. Was that in the fourth quarter or still in the third quarter?
So it was third quarter 23-0, 23-8 going to the fourth quarter. And if the Colts had completed the comeback, that would have been the largest regular season comeback in franchise history. 5 times they have come from 21 points down, but it would not have been the biggest comeback in franchise history because that obviously is the Chiefs playoff game from 2013 when they trailed 38-10 and won that game 45-44.
For those of you didn't get a chance to introduce him right up the front because, like I said, my mind was not where it should have been. But Greg joining us for the first time. But Greg Rakestraw, of course, Vice President and the voice of ISC Sports, which you can hear covering whether it's IHSA, hearing about Colts TV, and they have a myriad of programs on the ISC network. You guys have all kinds of things going, Greg.
We do. It keeps us hopping. I think we produced 5 different football games on Friday night. We got another 4 or 5 that will be up this Friday night. We do the Indianapolis Indians games. We do a lot of work with Marian University, so we had their game on Saturday afternoon as well. It beats having a real job, but it does keep me awfully busy.
Absolutely. I know that for a fact. So what is your schedule like? I know, do you have weekly duties with the Colts?
So if there's a day that ends in Y, I'm usually covering a sporting event is usually the way that works. During the course of the week, as far as the Colts are concerned, usually I'm trying to be on at least a couple of Zooms each and every week with the team. That's Monday and Tuesday. Then practice has availability Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Normally I am out there Wednesday. In terms of home games, you will hear my voice on the Red Zone highlights in the stadium at halftime and during the second half. Road games, it is just the post-game show. But so much of my work with the team is done during the course of the preseason. I have been so fortunate for the last 6 years that I have been the preseason voice of the team, which means I'm not at camp every day, but pretty darn close. And my job is to learn as much about the 90 players as possible. And frankly, I'm oftentimes talking about player, number 81 that I am number 18 in terms of kind of on the roster depth. So I learned a lot about these guys in late July and early August, and then hopefully that, some of those guys stick on the roster, and then frankly some of that information sticks in my brain as I talk about them during the regular season. Like, for example, I can tell you that reserve defensive tackle Taven Bryan, one of 3 players in the National Football League from the University of Wisconsin that played University of Wyoming that played last year. I'm not sure that I'll use that in a post-game show this season, but I've got that tucked away just in case I need it.
and tons of Indiana high school sports, which keeps you absolutely busy because it's not just one, it's all kinds of them. I know you guys do a myriad of broadcasts, especially when it's tournament time.
Correct. And so we are fortunate enough where we work with the IHSA to produce a handful of state finals. So, like, for example, our crews will do soccer and volleyball coming up in the next few weeks. We'll have the wrestling state finals. We'll produce those coming up down at the Ford Center at Evansville. That moves this year because of the All-Star game being at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. We'll produce baseball again. We just finished doing 75 home games this year for the Indianapolis Indians, so we'll handle that as well. Coming up on Father's Day weekend, but it is a little bit of everything. And people often ask me, "Hey, what's your favorite sport?" And
the next one,
I don't dodge the question. I say, "Listen, I'm a Southern Indiana guy. I grew up around high school basketball, and because of the number of the games that I will do from mid-November till the end of March, I mean, I'm usually doing 70 to 80 high school games and probably 20 or so college games from November 1 through, say, March 30th this year. So if I pick one, it's basketball. But frankly, if I didn't do that variety, I think I get burned out. I love being able to bounce back and forth from, say, volleyball to soccer to football this time of year. I really enjoy that.
Well, it certainly keeps you busy. And when he says Southern Indiana, he's talking about Lanesville, people, tiny little old Lanesville, which is actually a great town. I think they just had the Heritage Days, right?
Correct. So Heritage Weekend is always the second weekend of September, the weekend usually after Labor Day. And my hometown of about 700 or 800 expands to about 75,000 over the course of 3.5 days. It's absolutely nuts to think what was supposed to be a bicentennial celebration in 1976 now kind of is up there again, to put it in Southern Indiana terms, almost similar to a Harvest Homecoming in terms of that is simply an event you circle on the calendar every year. Not just here from Lanesville, the road here from the surrounding counties. You're going to go be a part of the party. You're going to be a part of the festival. Unfortunately, because of my schedule, I don't make it back very often because that always coincides with the first weekend of the Colts season. Usually I've got like an Indy 11 game. If those know the Indy 11, that is the pro soccer team in Indianapolis that plays the level below Major League Soccer. Again, for Southern Indiana folks listening, big rival of Lou City, even if Lou City's had the better of us a good deal of the last several years. Both of us will be playoff teams this year. So I don't have a chance to make it home all that much anymore. So I, of course, live vicariously, Jim, through my high school team's athletic conquests, like Fridays when the Eagles won a boys tennis sectional for the first time in 37 years. And since those are largely like the kids of like my buddies that I grew up with, it's been fun to watch this from 100 miles north of there.
Yeah, how about the women's basketball team? I think when the Hintons were in there, they had a pretty good role as well.
Correct, and I was only related to 4 of the players that were on that state championship team. So, and I have been so fortunate. Lanesville has won now 2 state titles, one in baseball and one in girls basketball. I have been on the call of both of those games.
And it's amazing because when I say small town, this is a legitimate small town. I mean, I'm very familiar with it. I spent a ton of time there because I grew up kind of right next to it in Greenville. But what I love about Lanesville is still no stoplight. They do not have a single stoplight. Greenville has a daggone stoplight now, and it just still upsets me. And it's probably been 8-10 years now.
Now, we do have interstate exit, and because they built the Dollar General in the floodplain, we might have to put a stoplight where Crandall Lanesville Road meets State Road 62, or as others would know it, like the west suburbs of town, because you can see, like downtown, like a block or 2 away from that point. So perhaps that level of progress is coming to Lanesville at some point in the next decade or 2, Jim. You never know.
I know this is a little bit outside of what you've been covering, but yesterday Indiana made it known they fired offensive coordinator Walt Bell. Things had not been going well for the Indiana football program, but that's a major step when any school, especially Indiana, fires somebody in season. That usually doesn't happen.
My thought is that that's a sign of there's some nervousness about what the future is going to look like. And I understand where Tom Allen is at. I understand the lack of progress that has been made, the obvious trouble on offense. And I think back to what I know Don Fisher's going to follow me up here on the program coming up in a few minutes. I very vividly remember Don on Friday with JMB here in the Indianapolis area talking about, hey, Maryland's a really good team.
Oh, yes.
And Michael Oxley has done a nice job in building up that program. So it's not taking anything away from them. But when one of the teams that you are going to be compared to in the Big Ten in Maryland, and even with going away from divisions, I think Indiana's going to be compared to Maryland, Illinois, Northwestern, Rutgers. Those are the programs that are most like you historically. And frankly, Indiana doesn't have the track record success that most of those schools I just mentioned do, to be blunt about it. But when one of those has clearly bettered you, which is what Maryland just did on Saturday, it makes you realize you can no longer continue to do business in the way in which you're doing it. So you're going to make a change, do it going into the bye week. You have an experienced coach in Rod Carey will take over the play calling. I'm not sure the next game you're going to see any big changes because of the level of competition they are playing, but you've got to try something because obviously this season is quickly heading off the rails, and that could spell a potential change, I think, looming in the offseason for IU football.
Yeah, but I don't think it will be at the top because they have a nice $20 million buyout that lasts through December 1st of 2024, which is kind of handcuffing Indiana in that regard.
I understand that, and again, let me say this: I am always rooting for Tom Allen to be successful.
Yep.
If I'm the father of a high school football player, I would have no problem sending my son to go play for Tom Allen because I know he'll be a better man for it. I want him to succeed. At some point in time, though, and again, I understand the financial implications. I get that in football it is not a license to print money in Bloomington. I get that. But at some point in time, if you have 3 successive seasons of not sniffing a bowl game at the end of it, you're going to lose your fan base. And you've got to do something to keep them interested or to keep them from saying, hey, when does basketball practice start? And so, again, you're talking about how many millions you want to lose in either direction, to be blunt about it. I hope, frankly, that decision for Scott Dolson doesn't have to be made. I hope Tom finds a way to turn things around. I want him to be successful there. But if it doesn't get better this year, there's some hard questions you got to ask.
Absolutely. I think everyone feels that way, Greg. What's up next for you?
So for me, it would be high school football Friday night, Warren Central and Carmel. I'll mix in some college soccer tomorrow night. Butler and IUPUI on the men's side. The IUPUI men are in first place in the Horizon League. At least they were heading into the week. I had to check the standings after they had a draw with Detroit Mercy. But then, believe it or not, I have a Saturday off. That happens like 4 or 5 times a year. I have the bye, like the Hoosiers, this Saturday as well. Then Colts and Titans on Sunday afternoon. I joked in the post-game show yesterday, it's like Bill Brooks and I have a shift at the factory this year because the Colts play so many 1 o'clock games. So good chance you'll hear me on a radio station throughout the state Sunday afternoon, say between 4:30 and 6, leading into the high school football pairing show for the upcoming state tournament, which starts in just a couple of weeks.
Wow. So much going on. And as you see, Greg is a walking, I just coined a phrase, I think, Sportopedia. He's our.
I like that. I've been called a lot worse, even early this morning, Jim. So I appreciate that.
It didn't take long. Wow, Sportopedia. Hey, Greg's going to be joining us each Monday. We're very, very fortunate. Make sure you can find him on social media at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter and at a number of other places. I'm sure a specific website at iscsportsnetwork.com. Any place?
That is correct, sir. And for a measly $4.99 a month, you can have access to the entire ISC Sports Network catalog, past games, Query and Schultz, etc. All of our broadcasts are free. You can go behind the paywall from an archive standpoint, but we certainly think it's worth $5 a month. ISCSportsNetwork.com.
And I am looking at a complete list of unbelievable different things to watch, follow. So, yeah, more than worth that. Greg, I can't thank you. Look forward to it, man.
I'm sorry it's taken us, obviously, you know, I've known each other for a long time. I'm sorry it's taken this long for us to connect and do this on a regular basis, but I'm so looking forward to joining you each and every Monday morning here on Indiana Sports Beat.
Me as well. Greg Rakestraw from ISC Sports joining us here on Monday. Don Fisher coming up next. We'll be back with that right after this break.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
I emailed him twice, never heard back.
What did you say? I didn't hear you. What? RC, you're muted.
I was just letting you know that I emailed him twice separate. I saw your email.
I'll call him.
Okay.
I forgot he was coming on at the last second. Then Don called while I was on. See what I can do for him.
I don't like just having our security. You're muted, Jim, if you're trying to talk to me.
No Don Fisher today, unfortunately. He had something emergency come up.
Okay. All right. Well, it's time for us to go back live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday. This is the 1st of October, right? No, it's the 2nd of October. We already screwed that one up. Second day. We've already snuck into October. Welcome back. Just finished up with Greg Rakestraw. Greg will be joining us each and every Monday going forward. Looking forward to that. Greg, of course, just a myriad of Indiana sports across the state, as you just heard, on the ISC network here in Indiana. Indiana's, I don't know. I'm not even sure what that stands for. But they have everything. You have Marion football. You got high school. It's crazy. All the things that you can find on there that you can't, people that like to watch, especially the folks that have moved out of state or whatever from out of state. There's so much you can catch, especially around tournament time, which is great. Looking forward to that. A gigantic weekend of sports. Apologize that Don Fisher is not going to be joining us today. For those of you that I know that are excited to hear that, he just had to call and let me know that he has had something come up, but he will be with us again. We'll get that made up. Of course, the biggest news for Indiana is I mentioned earlier that they have parted ways with offensive coordinator Walt Bell. And not exactly a shock. I am always surprised when Indiana does do something in season on the football side, because they have never shown the impotence of doing things they should do when they should do it. But Indiana has parted ways with their offensive coordinator, and Rod Carey will take over those duties. Now, you heard his name last year when he took over was it last year or year before, that he took over the offensive line from Darren Hiller when Darren Hiller was fired after a long, drawn-out process of Indiana not being successful. So hopefully Rod Carey will carry Indiana in a different direction. The one thing, it will have to be better. I think that he just has more experience around offense, period. And that in and of itself is not going to bring you success, but it's a part of it. But it's just having an experienced offensive mindset, because Indiana doesn't have that. Tom Allen, as much as everyone loves him, and we all want him to have success, he is just, offense is like poison ivy. I mean, that's why it was a couple of years ago, I forget if it was Walt that he hired or whatever, and he said, "No, whoever I'm hiring, they're the director of the offense." Basically, like, I don't know anything about it, so I'm staying away from it. That's not. I just don't think you can be successful in that manner. You have to be equally versed on both sides of the ball, because you have to be thinking 2 steps ahead. Obviously, not a great example, but Lane Kiffin obviously is an offensive-minded coach. But if you go back and watch that game, no matter what had happened, if it was a defensive turnover that Ole Miss got, or he's not jumping around. He's looking. He's already he's got it. Look, what are we doing? Where are we? What are we going next? What are we? I think Indiana's rudder stays stuck in the middle too many times during the game. They lose leadership for a little bit, direction, and it's just critical, because every game has moments where the smallest mistake, like a call on 4th down against Louisville, I don't know how you can blame Walt Bell for calling that, but that call had to be okayed. And there's no way in hell I'm ever okaying that call. None. There's other things. But you heard Greg Rakestraw was just with us. That's when you see that, when you see in-season changes, you know that is the concern is great. Although Greg, said his thoughts are that there's great fear of change at the end of the season by a staff when you see that. And then I'm like, man, as there should be. I agree with that. But because of the contractual ramifications that are laid out, I don't see how that's even possible with Indiana. No one is going to pony up $20 million to go away, for someone to go away. Because guess what is the next thing you have to do? Pony up another bunch of millions of dollars to bring in the new guy. Hence, that's the next question, though. That is where I believe Indiana has had their biggest issues. Who's doing the hiring? that hiring should be done by someone or a group that has extensive experience in doing just that. Whether that's a group, I don't care if it's an outside service. B, it needs to be someone who has had success making those hires. And again, I don't care if that's a group, if that's a service, if that's a company, outside all of that. But that is what, if there's ever a change, and I use future, and I'm not saying there should be this moment. I'm not saying that there will be. There will be, if things don't change, there will be after next season. There's no way to ignore that. But Indiana cannot rely on Indiana to make any more major decisions like that. And write the contracts. They have got to start hiring somebody that writes contracts that do not handcuff the programs or the schools. It's just ridiculous, some of these things. It's like there's no way that the receiving party can lose. They're not held to any standard. You get this. You get this. We can't even fire you. Why? What other job in the world is there that if you suck, and I'm not saying I shouldn't have used, if you do not do well at your job, are you guaranteed to keep it, and to keep it at a very, very high rate? I don't have that. And I work for myself. The people determine that. But most people, most of you, don't have that kind of luxury. If you just did not do your job well, you're probably not going to be around long. And with the money that they're talking these days, that's got to change. I mean, I know that Kirk Ferentz's son is one of the only coaches that I know of, and that's because things hadn't gone well, and they're still not going too well offensively for Iowa, but there's a caveat in his contract. They have to do so much. Well, every coach's contract, football, whatever, there should be caveats in there that you have to win. You get a couple of seasons to do with what you need to do to rebuild. But in this era of the transfer portal of NIL, after that, there have to be parameters set, and you have to meet these parameters. I'm not even suggesting what the third year would be, but at some point it has to be, you have to average 6 wins per season after this point. If you're not doing that at the minimum, then what are you doing? What's the point? I mean, that goes for all sports because the money is crazy. Mercy. I've not even looked over at the comments. I appreciate everybody on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Don't forget Indiana Sports Beat, powered by Andy Moore Honda. Make sure you go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door in the best in new and used vehicles. And, of course, the Wow Food Group and their family of restaurants in and around the Bloomington and Bedford area. Larry's on from Las Vegas. Appreciate you. Kent from Mount Pleasant. Jamie, Mike, mornings. Coach Tom Allen still doing Tom Allen things. Permanent OC instead of interim title. Well, I don't have a problem with that because that's for a season and a half at most. Also, maybe that's for Rod Carey. I don't know. But if Rod Carey is such a good coach that he can step in and do all of this, why wasn't he doing something more like this before? And I'm not blaming him. Justin on the board, appreciate you. Oh, we got to go over our picks. Don't forget. I'm going to pull those up in a minute. John, how are you doing, sir? Appreciate you. Gritty's on. Yeah, Greg Straw is fun. We're going to enjoy having him on, man. I wish we could get him on a different second and go much longer. And I wish I'd have known that Don couldn't come on today. We would have gone much longer. Fred says a great week in number 5 picks for the ISBR Fantasy Football Group. How about a Fresca? We'll have to check into those. Jamie, appreciate you, Ross. Heath. 5 laughs on as well. Appreciate all of you guys. Making sure I'm not missing anybody. Jason says Rod Carey is the permanent OC, so he gets no national search after this season. I think that would be pointless. That after this season is what would be considered a lame duck season for Tom Allen, in my opinion. He has to make a bowl game next year because of the $20 million buyout. He's not going anywhere this season, people. So I don't see there a change coming personally after this year. I just don't, because of the financial ramifications. But I think that there has to be a bowl game next season. That's going to be a difficult task to achieve because I'm not sure how many guys they're going to be able to hold on to after this season. Are they going to be able to hold on to Jalen Lucas? I don't know. We'll find out. Speaking of which, Derek says if they stop running Jalen Lucas between the tackles and use him as a Darren Sproles type, that would be enough to change enough for him to be compared how it has been. Yeah, it's not. I've never understood trying to run him up the tackles, between the tackles. Doesn't make sense, but talked about it a lot. It is what it is. Drake says, until you can get a football coach who can consistently get the team to a bowl game, there's no way I should have that big of a buyout for anyone. Now that I do agree. I'm not sure how that ever happened, but we've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. I guess it's time for a break. We've got Dustin DePerick joining us from the Indy Star today as well. Looking forward to it. Appreciate you being along with us, and we're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Yeah, these off days weirdly are different breaks. So what are the break times today?
Okay, so this one, hold on, let me pull it up on my phone here. The next one will be 6:37. We'll call
stop. Just give me the minutes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. 37, 57, 17, 37. Well, sorry, the show will end at 40. So not 37 on that final one, 40.
Dustin is joining us next, I hope. He was sent the yes. Oh, and Rob Cassidy. That's right. I forgot about that. When's Rob on?
Sorry. I was not given the times.
Okay. Don't worry about it. It's a great add-on. I forgot, though. Talking some recruiting today.
Awesome. We go live here in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Monday. It is October. Greg Rakestraw was on earlier with us. Don Fisher had to reschedule, but of course, looking forward to talking to Dustin Dopirak and Rob Cassidy from Rivals National Recruiting is going to join us, as there has been just tons of talk, anticipation, gnashing of teeth over the recruiting, basketball recruiting for Indiana, for Liam McNeely. He is not making it easier on Indiana, but I don't know that he's making it any harder. It's just that people, a lot of fans were expecting a commitment as soon as he visited or right after he visited, and it's not done yet. I mean, Bill Self paid a visit to him, an in-home visit to Liam McNeely. There was then followed that up with Mike Woodson going back at it. So it's not something that's over. There's just a battle going on. You've got a battle going on with Boogie Fland, whom I've got to tell you, I'm really, really impressed with what Nate Oates has done to be able to have somebody seemingly down to 2 schools, and those 2 schools being Indiana and Kentucky, and then you being able to jump up into that fray at toward the end, and being Alabama. That's impressive, and it's probably a little scary for Indiana fans for sure. But Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star joining us, and looking forward to talking to Dustin to see how his lovely weekend went.
It's good, Jim. Hey, I'm going to be I'm at media day, so I'm going to be running up there in a minute. So I'm going to be out, and then I'm going to have a hard out again, just so you guys know. So I just wanted to stop in real quick before I got to go up there. So I'll just, peace when it's time. How are you, sir?
Good. Was actually at the Colts game yesterday. A great comeback by the Colts, but I forgot today's media day for the Pacers. Probably should have just stayed up there and did the show from there. Would have made it a lot easier.
For sure.
Bad. Too much going on in the head. And I know you got so much going on. What's the biggest thing about today's media day with the Pacers that you're expecting to it's not something you learn a lot of?
Oh, no, sometimes it is. I mean, we would have talked about Buddy Hield and find out sort of we got to talk to Buddy, find out how he's doing, basically kind of where his head's at as far as contract negotiations and all that kind of things concerned. If he is as far out on it as it seems or not, or just kind of his level of hope or thought or belief that there's a chance that he could stick around or sign an extension. But we'll see. Beyond that, it's talking to Rick Carlisle, find a better sense of how he views this team, the level of competition, which I think is going to be really high. I think that'll be a big part of this story this season. So there's a lot, there's not a lot of whole news, but there's a lot that we can find out, just a general sense of where everybody's heads at. I think it's really going to be an interesting team. I think there's a lot of competition for spots. I think that's going to be sort of a fascinating dynamic this season, is sort of figuring out who gets to play. I mean, last year there was a few guys in the team that were sort of there to be the, elder statesman and sort of, watch and guide, James Johnson, George Hill in the second half of the season once they acquired him. But this year's team, I think everybody has reason to believe that they should play and be a part of the rotation. And some guys aren't. You're not going to play 13 or 15 or 13 even. So they've got to figure that out. But they're going to fight and they're going to battle and see what happens and see if they have to make any moves after that. It's going to be a very interesting camp, I think, for them.
Jason Askey knows you cover the Pacers, but I'd love to hear your take on the Bucks trading Damian Lillard and the Celtics for Holiday.
Yeah, no, it's an absolute game changer. It's just earth-shaking moves, basically to change up the entire dynamic of the league in the span of, it basically, leading into October, right before camp. I'm gonna move over here a little bit, but yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a huge deal. I was just, I don't want to say I was stunned because you obviously knew that Dame was looking to move. But am I coming up? All right. Yeah, basically, I just thought those were massive moves. I thought the Celtics had to make a move. Basically, I think once Holiday was available, there was some talk of the Pacers getting involved, but I thought that the Celtics really had to do that so that they wouldn't get passed by. I mean, it obviously, cements the Bucks as a huge title contender. You put Lillard and Giannis together. That's a heck of a combination. And Holiday, I think you had to get if you were Boston. And they had that was a pretty, big haul that Portland got for Brogdon and Robert Williams and a couple picks. But, huge moves. I think put both of those teams by far at the top of the East. And it'll be interesting to see them compete. I think everybody else is a distant second. So, but I got to go up. I'll try to get back on here in a few minutes.
Appreciate you, brother. We look forward to it. Dustin Empiric joining us live from the Pacers Media Day up in Indianapolis as we're here in Bloomington. I should have just done that. I forgot all about that. Daggone it. It would have been a great place to do the show from. But we'll look forward to Dustin rejoining us and talking about a myriad of things, including all the things that are going on with the Pacers. There are a lot. That trade was massive. I'm like, wow, that does change things. Fred pointing out that where did it go? Caesars book took two large bets on the New York Jets last night, $350,000 and another at $240,000. Brazen bets since the Jets were 8.5 underdogs to the Chiefs. Did they end up covering that? I know that they lost, but their defense apparently played incredible. I was at the Colts game, so I did not get to see that. But how about the Colts? I could not believe the charge and how the defense really just shut the Rams out in the second half, and the offense got things grooving. But ultimately, they ended up losing in overtime, unfortunately. But it's got to be a good feeling for Colts fans to watch Anthony Richardson as he was able to do that in the second half. That's invaluable experience. The experience of being under pressure, of being down 23-0 and having to this is the NFL, and that's the great thing about the NFL. I knew the game wasn't over, and I'm like, I kept watching the clock. I'm like, shoot, there's 2 minutes left, man. There's all kinds of stuff that'll happen. It's wild what happens in the last 2 minutes of an NFL game. And it was fun to watch, fun to see them do that. Of course, you would rather have seen the Colts come out with the win, but a lot of invaluable experience gained towards that. The big story today, of course, Indiana firing Walt Bell, their offensive coordinator. Going forward, Rod Carey is the official offensive coordinator. He was given that tag. It's not interim, but what does the rest of the season lay out? Because Purdue had looked horrible up until this weekend, and they absolutely crushed Illinois, which that's mind-boggling. That tells you how badly they're missing Ryan Walters, who's now the coach of Purdue, who was their defensive guru. Boy, that gives Indiana hope when they play Illinois, but I'm not sure where the great hope lies in the rest of their schedule. And because I've not seen a team that it's just going to be interesting to see how much change can be made on offense. First of all, not only a change at OC, how about a change at quarterback? I went on record early on saying that I thought it should be Sorsby, Brendan Sorsby. And it wasn't just because I was pulling that out of a hat. That was from talking to a lot of people and people close to the program. And I think that change might come. I think that Brendan Sorsby will offer a little more stable offense. We've seen way too many passes from Taven Jackson. Not that he's not a good quarterback and going to be potentially a really good quarterback. But right now, he's just not there. He's throwing high, he's throwing low. His passes are just not, they're just not accurate. Look over quickly to the standings the stats from last week, and completion percentage, 59%. The top quarterbacks around the country are in the mid-70s. Mid-70s. You cannot complete 59% of your passes and win. While Sorsby only completed 64 of his, that was on that's 7 of 11. That's not bad. And he had 84 yards in his stint in there. I'm going to be surprised if you don't see Brendan Sorsby start against Michigan. I really am. But we'll see. We'll see what changes are made. Josh Henderson also should return, hopefully, for the Michigan game. Not that they have Kristen Taylor or Turner has done a yeoman's job in his absence. He had 61 yards rushing, averaged 4 yards a carry. But they're not getting anything else from Jalen Lucas. Had a total of 28 yards rushing. If you're going to run him, he's got to get yards. And then from a receiving standpoint, no one over 100 yards. Donovan McCulley, the closest at 79. Jalen Lucas, 2 yards. So Jalen Lucas had a total of 30 yards of offense. That's not going to work. And as the schedule continues to get more and more difficult, you're going to have to get more and more creative. You're going to have not just creative, but you have to be diligent. You can't make mistakes. Not that everyone's going to be mistake free, but dumb mistakes, they have to be eliminated. You have to be better in places that does not take the greatest effort, that does not take the greatest athletic ability. Not jumping off sides, not having illegal motion, not this and that, not getting dumb 15-yard penalties. Those things do not take athletic ability. So there are plenty of things a team can do to make up for shortcomings. And Indiana is one of those programs that absolutely, beyond question, has to do that. We'll see, and I wish them the best of luck, but the remaining of their schedule, it does not come easy. After a bye week, which is fortunate because now you've got Rod Carey he's not going to install a different offense. Now, he may change some things, like quarterback. Justin DePerick jumping back on with us as he is live from Indianapolis. How are you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. Sorry about that. It took a little bit
No
more
problem.
longer than I thought it was going to. But
I
no,
thought
back
you
to
may be
media day,
getting.
I
I thought you may be getting signed to a two-way or something.
I'm not. They are, not only would that not work out well for me, they actually have their two ways filled. It got pretty good two ways. They have Oscar Tshiebwe, the former National Player of the Year and two-time Nations leading rebounder, on a two-way. So that tells you how hard it is to make it in this league now, especially if you're a big guy. But yeah, no. So yeah, back up here where they're starting to get rolling. Not getting rolling. They're getting all TV cameras set up. Apparently, they're doing the haircuts 3 at a time downstairs. Guys got to make sure that they are, just all of just as fresh as it gets. Not kidding. That's what I was told on the way up.
You should have stopped by and got one.
I just got mine, man. I just got mine at Great Clips.
That would have been a great place for me to do the show from. That would have been awesome.
Clearly.
Could have covered that live. So what's the biggest news going into today? Is with the changes, with what's coming up for the Pacers, what is the biggest news?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's news, it's just kind of seeing, again, where Buddy Hield's head is at, coming off of contract negotiations that apparently stalled. That's the best, are halted for the moment. That's sort of the best, I guess, way to describe it at this point. Don't know on the record certainly what the offer was or how far away they are, but having, from Chad Buchanan willing to come out and say, these things are halted, that doesn't mean they're not going to come back. The news generally does suggest that there's some distance as far as, what the Pacers are willing to pay him and what he wants. He's making $19 million this year. You would have to presume he probably wants more than that. I don't know if the Pacers want to play more than that. I don't know if they should pay more than that. But they've got one more year of him. And you would think that they don't want to give him away unless they're going to get something legitimate back. Have to presume they at least made some calls, on Drew Holiday just to find out what they could package Buddy with to get in those sweepstakes. Obviously, that whatever they came up with, wasn't enough because Boston made a great offer. I thought, on that. I really thought Portland comes out in pretty good shape, getting Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, and a couple first rounders. One being in 2029, but still, that was a pretty good haul for Holiday, who's only got one more year on his contract, but again, I think can help Boston win a title this year. I think that's totally possible. I think that puts them in that realm. They'll be at least on par with Milwaukee, and I think that has a chance to be a really great race. But point of the matter, it was too rich for the Pacers' blood. So it's sort of a question of, okay, where do you go from here? It seems like their goal is to keep just play with them throughout the year, see what happens around the deadline, get the most production out of him they can. It might mean they have to put him on the bench, though, bring him off as kind of a six-man scorer. So we'll see where that goes, and we'll see where his head is at with it. Buddy's been a great clubhouse guy, for the Pacers. He fits in really, really well, especially with Tyrese Halliburton. Question obviously you have is, is he going to be still cool with it if he's coming off the bench and in a lesser role and maybe not playing as many minutes with Tyrese? How is all that going to go? I mean, things did not go great at the end with Sacramento, but then things weren't going great for a lot of people with Sacramento around that time. That's why they had to make some changes, especially when it came to head coach, and they're in a lot better shape than they were then. But I think he wasn't returning like Luke Walton's phone calls, I think was the report, coming out back then a couple of years ago. So it's where's Buddy's head going to be at? What are they going to do with him? I think, beyond that, I think everything is pretty much set from a personnel standpoint. There's not a lot of newsy stuff, but I am interested just to see, how Rick Carlisle views this group and the challenge. And I think, again, because they're going to have really 15 guys that can play, some of those guys aren't. So how are you going to, what do you want to see in competition? What do you want to, how do you want to balance your rotations? What do you want in your first and second units? They really put a lot into getting better defensively, and I think you can put together a really good defensive five. But your best 5 defensive players and your best 5 offensive players, mostly aren't the same guys. I think Miles Turner really is the only guy that overlaps there. So how are you kind of putting that group together? I think is some of the interesting questions that we'll be asking and just trying to get Rick to talk about, and get a sense of where he's at going into what seems like it's going to be a really important camp.
I know this stinks for you because of where you are, but we've got to take a quick break.
I should go too.
Get into our second hour. Buddy, I appreciate you joining us today. I know it's running around. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to talking to you the next time to get the full breadth of everything that goes on there and find out. Have a great one. Dustin Appier.
I'll see you.
Dustin Appier from the Indy Star joining us live from the Pacers Media Day, and we've got lots more coming up in our second hour here at Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with it, including Rob Cassidy, the National Director of Recruiting for Rivals, will talk about the basketball recruiting world and lots more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Man, that stinks. Just didn't work out today, but oh well. I'm glad we have Rob coming up. That's going to be basketball recruiting, baby.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, baby. Let's see. What did Michigan State do over the weekend? Did they win? Oh, no, they ended up losing to Iowa.
All right, Jim. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday, October 2nd. I hope you had a great weekend. It was a daggone nice weekend out, for sure. The weather was spectacular, as it should be in October. Looking forward to Rob Cassidy joining us in the next segment. He is the National Recruiting Director for Rivals, basketball recruiting, that is. And so we will have a deep dive discussion into that, as I know a lot of people interested, a lot of names, including Liam McNeely, Boogie Fland, Derek Queen, amongst others. But Indiana yet to land a 2024 recruit yet. Liam McNeely is long thought to be that first to happen. And Kansas is not giving up on him. Now you've got Alabama involved with Boogie Fland in addition to Kentucky that Indiana is going against. Maryland could be the lean for Derek Queen. So what happens? I mean, I'm not suggesting Indiana strikes out, but it's not out of the question. And what would happen if that were the case? Boy, that's not something you want to see, but and I only see that if they don't get McNeely. But it's going to be an interesting decision time, and when that happens, they're not the only hurry they're in is to maybe be done with it. But obviously, if they don't make those quick decisions, they don't feel rushed. They're not feeling the pressure that the fans are feeling. I think without question that the fans are way more anxious, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think they're way more anxious about that decision, finding out about that decision, than the kids are about making it, because they're like, they're talking to all these high-profile coaches going to all these high-profile schools, talk to their parents. They've got NIL packages to go through. I don't think that that's something that you just you decide in a minute. You don't just sit down and that it takes some thinking, especially guys at this elite level, because this is a way station. All of it, Kansas, Indiana, doesn't matter. Kentucky, they're just waypoints. They're only going to be here and they're going to move on. That's their plan. That's their goal. They want to be here as short a time as possible, not because of dislike for any of these places, because they want to go to another level. Mackenzie Mbakwe, he doesn't want to be at Indiana for longer than a year. But that's not it. Sometimes it works out that way. Jalen Hood-Schifino, I am not convinced he would be in the NBA today had Xavier Johnson not been injured last year. You know, things happen, things change. But some guys have that appearance, that goal, that potential immediately. Some gain it. So it's going to be a curious season. Then you've got teams that Indiana, does Indiana have? I know they have the talent. They have some experience with Xavier and Trey Galloway, and some of the younger guys were able to gain valuable experience last year. CJ Gunn, Caleb Banks, mixing that in now with new faces like Mackenzie Mbako, like Kel'el Ware, like Peyton Sparks, and the existing faces of Malik Renew. Indiana has a ton of talent. Got to weld that together. Going against teams in the league that are much more intact. Purdue, completely intact, virtually, with everyone returning from last year. So look forward to talking to Rob about that. Tim Wakefield, the famed knuckleballer with the Red Sox organization, dies at 57, was with that organization for 29 years. The New York Mets fire Buck Showalter, K-Bros Mets, who had the highest payroll in all of baseball. And here's a bad one. The Reds, oh man. The first game of the St. Louis series, they won 80-2. I'm like, man, they're going to need some of those runs. They win the second game, and then they get just blown out in the third and last game of the season, which was Joey Votto's final, what a lot of people think would be his last game. He's tossed in the first inning. I mean, that's something to look up. Has anyone who is retired from baseball been tossed in the first inning of their last game? So that's nuts. Christian McCaffrey with 49ers breaks a Jerry Rice record with a touchdown in his 13th straight game. Some great college games over the weekend. Colorado and USC. Man, you got to give it to Colorado. They were getting absolutely smoked, and they come back and get within a touchdown of that game. Wow, was it 48, 47, or 41, something like that, I think. And then the Ole Miss LSU game, man, I was watching that. That was just a barn burner that came down to Ole Miss being able to score at the end of the game and pull that game out. And of course, if you listen to the show, you know my daughter goes to Ole Miss, and I was telling her, hey, if you're down here on that field, be careful. And there she sure was. They were all down there having fun, which happy for her. To get a chance to do that. That's the biggest win at LSU in a long time, is they beat LSU. Gigantic win. So fun weekend of college football. Got an opportunity to watch some of those games. Georgia's still number 1 in the AP poll, which I'm over that. They haven't, not only have they been unimpressive, have they really beaten anybody? Why are these guys so afraid to move people? First of all, this poll started at the beginning of the year. Well, you just assume Georgia's number 1. Well, why? Polls should not be allowed out until 4 weeks in to a football season without question. And Georgia has not just shown me anything that they're the top team in the country. Now, has Michigan necessarily? I don't know. Maybe not. But I'll tell you what. I like Washington as well as anybody. USC, I like USC as well as anybody. There is such a bias. If you're an SEC team, they're not going to kick you out of that spot. But it did loosen up a little bit. A couple of teams regionally that you might know entered the poll. Of course, number 2, Michigan. They did receive 12 first-place votes. So Georgia has played 2 games of uninspired football. And the SEC is also down, as is the Big Ten, no less. I am not going to ignore that. But the SEC is probably a stronger, again, across the board, but not at the top. It's going to be interesting. The Pac-12 is the best conference right now, without question. And I just think that Washington is getting overlooked because they're Washington. How's USC is? Who says that they're not number 1? Their defense is a little shaky. They gave up a lot of points. That's something to look at. Notre Dame, another dramatic win. Well, they had a dramatic loss last week, but they're back into the top 10. I still can't get a gauge on some of these teams. But I did see the Florida-Kentucky game, and wow. And speaking of which, Indiana fans are just going to hate hearing this. But do you know a program that I think Indiana should model themselves after? Kentucky. They have played in what was the toughest conference for the last 7 years, although the Big Ten has been right there. But overall, you have to say the SEC is the toughest. They've had all the national champions in back in that span. And Kentucky was able to swim that channel, survive that channel. They lost 31 straight games to Florida. Very similar to Indiana's streaks with Michigan and Ohio State. But the difference is they stopped that streak as Indiana stopped the streak with Michigan, but they've now won 3 straight against Florida. Florida just beat the snot out of Tennessee earlier, who was a ranked team. They're doing things to try to win games. They're not doing what I call the Indiana does things the Indiana way. They like to keep things in the family. Not working. Does not work. If you want to win, if your goal is to win, you have to get the best you can get. I don't care where they come from. Some fans have a different take on that, but I'm going to disagree with you all day, twice on Sunday. But Louisville, a team Indiana, I can't say should have beaten, could have beaten. Also into the top 25. So I would imagine, has Maryland jumped up in there yet? Because aren't they 5-0, I believe? The Big Ten, do you know how many teams the Big Ten has in the top 25 this week? 3 out of 14 teams. Of course, number 2, number 4, number 6. Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State. Now, that's great to have 3 teams in the top 6. It's unbelievable. But then you got nothing. You've got no one. And that's not usually how it is in the Big Ten. But it is right now. The SEC back up to the king, being the king. They've got 7 teams ranging from the number 1 team, 11, 16, 20, 21, 22, 23. So the 1, 2, 3. They've got 4 teams that are in the backside from 20 to 23. And then it's a Pac-12 with 6. I love the Pac-12, which a big chunk of that will be joining the Big Ten next year. But, man, this is a year teams like Indiana could have made hay in the Big Ten because this is an opportunity year. Ironically, there's very few teams in the Big Ten that are making hay. Purdue looked good finally over the weekend. Maybe they're going to come around. Illinois, what in the world is going on with Brett Bielema's 3rd season? Holy smokes. Did losing Ryan Walters hurt them that badly? It must have. They gave up 44 points to Purdue. So Illinois is a team I can see Indiana with a chance to beat because Indiana's a team that has an offense that could challenge a team like that. Michigan State didn't win, but they gave Iowa a run. But the Big Ten is, they're down, and oh, moly. How many bowl teams we even come out of this league this year? Who knows? Hey, looking forward to our good friend Rob Cassidy, the National Director of Recruiting from Rivals, joining us next. Talking some hoops. We're back with that and more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Rob, how are you, brother?
Good. How you doing?
I cannot complain, man.
Good.
Football is weird season so far.
So this works out, you know.
You were what?
I said I just saw Liam yesterday, so this works out.
That does work out, especially for this fan base. I promise you that.
Yeah. Seems like he's going to Indiana, so
they're just making life rough on the fans.
Yeah, I don't really think Kansas is. You never really want to count self out, but we'll see.
How's everything going else?
Everything's good. It's been busy. You know, I just got back last night pretty late from Florida. but yeah, things are good. It's, you're ready for the season to start.
Not that far away, man.
No, it really isn't. It's like 40 days or something.
Not that far away, and some great early season games.
Yeah,
now, will you go to any of the? I know Indiana has got some good preseason games. Are you attending any of those?
I don't know what I'm doing as far as college games go this year. I usually go to a few. I haven't really decided yet. I haven't looked that far down the schedule. If I do, I will let you know.
I know they've got the one in Atlanta against Auburn.
Yeah, that's over Thanksgiving, right?
I believe so. Yeah, Hoopsgiving, and of course New York.
Yeah, the one in I'll be down in Atlanta around that time anyway, because they do a Hoopsgiving high school event too. So usually I get over to some college games there. So I might end up in Indiana, Auburn.
All right, guys, we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday, October 2nd. Hope you had a great weekend. It was a beautiful weekend. Lots of fun football games to watch, but we got hoops to talk about and the man to do it with. Rob Cassidy, the National Director of Recruiting for Rivals, joins us now. Rob, how are you doing, man?
Man, things are good. It's, I just got back from Florida late last night, so I'm dragging a little bit this morning. You know how that goes. You can never get a flight that's not delayed for 3 hours, but otherwise things are good.
Yeah, at least you were in Florida and not, I guess there's not too many places that are cold right now. So and that's always a benefit.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. How you doing?
Cannot complain. Just a big weekend of sports, having fun. I actually got to go as a fan to the Colts game yesterday, and that was a wild one. Ends up going to overtime as the Colts were down 23-0. They come back to tie and lose in overtime to the Rams, but very entertaining. So that's all you can ask for. But
yeah, absolutely.
Indiana fans, of course, on pins and needles, biting their nails and gnashing of teeth and all that, waiting. They're waiting for a commitment, as Indiana does not have one for the 2024 class. Of course, Liam McNeely, one of the top targets for Mike Woodson and crew, and that has been a chase all along. It seemed to come down between Indiana and Kansas, which that is always a scary battle when you're going against a guy like Bill Self and the Kansas program. But Indiana has shown itself that it can do that. They won out with Mackenzie Mbako. They have other recruiting battles going on right now, but Liam McNeely seems to be the one that is on everyone's mind. And fans were expecting a commitment like right after the visit, and I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. But I'm sure they'd like to see one sooner rather than later.
Yeah, when you're going to play when you're going to play with the Sharks and wade in the deep waters like Indiana has decided to do and go after some really truly elite guys, it's never going to be easy. Even when you get them, there are going to be some tense moments because Bill Self is going to get involved at the last minute and yada yada, and that kind of happens. I had the chance to talk to Liam this weekend in Florida. He was one of the guys I was down there seeing, and he told me in the next couple of weeks he will be announcing. He did not put a timetable on it. He said 2 weeks though. He's supposed to let me know before he does it, but that's the timetable we're looking at here. It's 2 weeks. It's not going to stretch into November. It's not going to be anything like that. I think it'll be sooner rather than later.
Well, that sounds good. And as far as you've been around him, you've talked to him a lot. What is the feel that you're getting is for McNeely?
I think he's going to Indiana. I don't know that for sure. He has not told me that. His mother has not told me that. But in just talking to him, it feels like, Kansas is, they recruit well and Bill Self recruits well, but it is hard to overcome the length of time that Mike Woodson has dumped into this recruitment and the resources. Kansas just doesn't have that bond. Indiana's had him on campus twice. He's been their top target for the better part of a year and a half. There's a bond there that's going to be hard to break. And I think that, Indiana fans should like where they stand. I wouldn't relax just yet. As long as Bill Self is around, there's a possibility for shenanigans. But I'd feel pretty good if I was Indiana.
And there's people like to talk about the Montverde connection, which that I'm sure that there's something to that, but that only goes so far because every kid has got his own I don't want to say agenda, but his own needs, his own life to live. So everything has to work out for them. But it probably doesn't help because he can talk to whether it's Jalen Hood-Schifino or Malik Reneau and say, and man, it's great here, whatever the case is. So that has to be a great selling point.
Yeah, what I always say about Schifino is, he helps more than anything, though, because, Woodson can point to him as a guy that it's one thing to get a guy like Cooper Flagg on campus or Montverde or something, and we got Cooper Flagg to the NBA. Well, Cooper Flagg was going to get Cooper Flagg to the NBA no matter what. With Schifino, he came in, wasn't really looked at as a one and done. So I think the work that they did when they can point to, hey, we took this kid that was supposed to be a 2 or 3 year player, and we put him in the first round. Being able to do that and have the kid go to the same high school as McNeely and Derek Queen, who is also a target, I think is important.
What's with a guy like Liam McNeely, obviously a guy that's going to come in and affect any program. Indiana right now has Mackenzie Mbako, who kind of fit into that very slot, and Mackenzie, he just wants to be at Indiana for a year. He wants to move on to another level, not to another school, but to the next level. And same, I'm sure, with Liam McNeely, and I'm sure he's eyeing that spot.
Yeah, I think so. I think he definitely is, and they probably use that as a pitch for him. That's kind of what matters to the kids these days, and I think that's why Woodson has been so effective so quickly too. It's the same reason. Now, if you don't maintain it, it can go south on you. I mean, you can ask Juwan Howard, but when you get there and you have that NBA experience, and you know what it takes to make it in the NBA, and you can point to, I spent this much time in the NBA. It gives you an advantage until it doesn't, until you start losing a bunch of games with Woodson has it and Juwan has. So his kind of allure on the trail has faded a bit, I think. You can get a boost, and I think you're seeing that.
And there's recruiting. You mentioned looking at Jalen Hood-Schifino, and Mike Woodson, of course, has an extensive NBA background, but he also has an entourage with an extensive NBA background around him. Is that becoming more important than, I don't want to say more important than winning, but you don't have to win a national championship for these guys to go to your school if you are producing NBA talent?
Yeah, I think winning is third these days. I think one is definitely the name, image, and likeness money. That has to be there. Now, you don't have to outbid everybody else every time, but you have to be competitive. And then if you can point to, I know how to get you to the league, and you have something to back that up. I mean, anybody can say that, but if you can point to Schifino and you can point to your time spent there, I think that's definitely number two. These kids, they do want to win. I think a lot of them, and every kid is different, obviously. But when you're a high-level player, and we're talking high-level, like a top 25 player in the country, you are not thinking so much about college as you're thinking about the NBA. That's it. I mean, these kids are so close to the NBA. A lot of them all have agents. NIL agents that will end up being agents down the road, and that's what they're focused on. For better or for worse, that's kind of the waters we wade in these days.
And you've been around Liam McNeely a lot here, more of late than I have. But what are you seeing in his game that makes him so desirable?
He is really turned into kind of a complete player. I think the knock on him early in his career was, can he shoot it? Well, then he started shooting it pretty darn well this year in the EYBL. And then it was like, well, is he an elite defender? And he's really bought into that side of the ball the last year. And it's been interesting. It's been fun to watch him. I always get excited about prospects that when their trajectory is going well. You don't want a guy that's topped out when he gets to campus. Every time I see Liam, he seems to get a little better in one area of the game. And those are the kind of guys you get excited about because you don't really know where the ceiling is with him. He really does. This is he's a gym rat. And he seems to improve. Every time there's a knock on his game and it becomes public, he seems to address it and close that hole.
And the size, his size, he's become that, or not he's become, but his size has become that model for so many coaches to go after. That 6'8", broad-bodied shooter, defender, a guy that's kind of he could play the 3-4.
Yeah, they
maybe
talk
the
about
2 sometimes even.
Yeah, he brings the ball up sometimes, especially in the AAU. They talk about positionless basketball, and he's kind of it. He's the modern Swiss Army knife that everybody wants that can defend multiple positions, which has become super important, especially in the NBA. And it's kind of a model that was started, in the Kevin Durant era. You want a long guy that can kind of stretch the floor, shoot it, but also guard 3 or 4 different positions. And I think McNeely has the potential to be able to do all of that.
And as how transferring to Montverde for his senior season, what did that do for him, for his skill set?
He was there last year as well. So it's the last 2 years, but going up against head to head with some of these dudes at practice, you don't get to I think if you're in a normal high school, sometimes at practice, you're going up against a guy that's going to be, a Sigma Nu, 2 years, but Montverde, you're going up against guys that are going to be Division I basketball players, and if not professional basketball players. And when you do that every single day, I mean, everybody knows how that works. High tide raises all ships. And I think that works. Iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely. And he's also played with guys that Indiana is recruiting. He is joining a roster that has come from his high school. Or I shouldn't say high school. Montverde's not really a high school.
It's a
what do you call it?
Academy.
Yeah, there you go. But so that has got to also have a nice little conduit, an easier conduit for him, for communication, for learning, for knowing of what to expect, things like that.
Yeah, it's around like-minded people, and everybody that's preparing themselves to get to the next level. And it's not just basketball at Montverde. It's they have other sports that are havens for high-level athletes that have that same work ethic, and that's who you're around all day. Francisco Lindor went to Montverde Academy and played baseball there. So, when you're, there are some normal students obviously too, but when your circle is people that are looking ahead to high-level athletic careers, they say you are the company you keep. So yeah, I think that definitely helps.
Also, and how big in the importance of for Mike Woodson to continue to land a guy like Liam McNeely?
Yeah, he's got to get him, I think, just because of all of the resources he's dumped into it. You would hate for them to finish second there, and then there's a chance they finish second with Derek Queen, and then what happens to the backup options because they've spent so much time on guys like Boogie Fland and Liam McNeely. Now, they don't need to get all of them, but they need to get one of them. One of these big guys they're going after, they need to get him. I think they will get McNeely. Otherwise, then it gets dicey because, the backup options are flying off the board right now while Indiana's chasing the golden goose. So it's, I think it's crucial that Woodson land him. And, I think he ultimately will, but you never know. It's not done until it's done.
Yeah, Indiana did go in this season last year and come into this season with an open scholarship, which was a little surprising, but they have 12 scholarship players this year. And speaking of Derek Queen, he's someone that they've been after. They've been recruiting for 3 years. I know he's been there. Montverde seems like forever. He was there when Jalen Hood-Schifino was there. I saw him play then. I guess he was a sophomore, but while Indiana has recruited him, Maryland is also probably, would you consider them the leader in the club, not in the clubhouse necessarily, but Derek Queen kind of have a Maryland lean?
It seems like it. I was told by somebody that would know that they have kind of gone all in on him. I think they've gone all in on him onto the point where they've taken themselves out of the Boogie Fland sweepstakes because they just don't have the NLI money to get both of those guys, to be honest with you. So that's part of, I don't want to say that's directly the reason why Boogie Fland canceled that Maryland visit and isn't really considering them anymore, but they have dumped so many resources into Derek Queen that they think they're getting him, and they almost need to. They're almost in the same position with Queen as Indiana is with McNeely, where if they don't get him now, it's trouble.
Yeah, and how much of a possibility is Queen for Indiana, do you think?
I think if I was ranking the big three, I think Liam is the most likely. I think they're in a really good place with Boogie Fland, and then I think Queen is probably the third most likely. I think that eventually he'll end up at Maryland. I don't think it's a done deal, but I think out of the big three that they're chasing, he's the third most likely. I really like where they are with Fland. I think that they've got a much better shot than people are giving them here. Yeah, it's Kentucky too, but I think it's either going to be Indiana or Kentucky for him, with Alabama kind of hanging around on the periphery.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Alabama seem to have, and it is hard to do when it's kind of already been most people thinking it's down to Indiana and Kentucky. For an Alabama to get raised up into that conversation, I was like, wow, that surprised me a little bit. And he's landed some guys. Well, he just landed a few days ago or last week, whenever it was. But Boogie Fland is someone that I know Mike Woodson would absolutely love to get. And how big of a recruiting class would that be for Mike Woodson if he were able to land both Boogie Fland and Liam McNeely?
Yeah, if he can get 2 out of the 3 of Queen, McNeely, and Fland, it's a success. It's a massive success by anybody's measure. I don't think anybody expected him to get. If he gets all 3, forget it. But I think there's a chance he could get Fland and McNeely. I don't want to say, I don't want to come right out and say, hey, they lead for Boogie Fland, but they are serious there. I think there are some people that would dismiss this as, oh, he's going to Kentucky, but I don't want to go that far just yet, and there's not going to be an announcement from Boogie until the middle of October. His high school coach, who's kind of helping him through the recruitment, is on vacation in Italy right now. They're not going to announce until he gets back. When he gets back, I would expect something to happen pretty quickly. I'd expect to hear from Boogie Fland before Halloween.
Well, okay, so he's closer to the end of October, and so Liam is going to be closer to the middle of October, a couple of weeks from now. But these are all coming within the next month.
Yeah, this is all. I don't know Queen's timetable, to be honest. He's a little tough to read. He's one of these dudes that, him and his family are playing it really close to the vest, and I respect their right to do that. But he's hard to crack. So I don't know when that announcement's coming. But with Fland and McNeely, I feel pretty confident about their timetables.
Well, we'll definitely looking forward to that. What would having both Boogie and Liam McNeely on this Indiana roster at the same time do next year for these Hoosiers?
Well, they're 2 guys that just are able to come in and give you minutes right away. And that's, in the transfer portal era, that's, I think you used to expect that of highly ranked freshmen, but in the transfer portal era, it's different because you have more experienced guys. It does benefit you to play older guys. So there are a select few freshmen every year that you feel like can come in, and if they need to start, can start. And I think both of them can do that,
Yeah, and Indiana has shown that they can use the transfer portal, getting Kellel Ware from Oregon, and they will probably continue to do that and bring and try to mix a great recruiting class with what they have already on the roster through recruitment, and filling that in through the transfer portal to get to that elite level that Mike Woodson is trying to get the Hoosiers back to.
Yeah, and getting guys like Ware, I like that get. He's a guy that's got sky high potential. NBA guys like him. It just never. He needs to be in the right system. It never clicked for him there at Oregon. He's got, he needs coaches that can get his motor going, because sometimes he's apt to take plays off. It's kind of the knock on him late in high school and when he was at Oregon. But he's also a guy that if you can get him to buy in and everything clicks, then all of a sudden you've got a potential NBA guy on the roster. So it's kind of a risk-reward situation with Ware, and that's how it is a lot of times in the transfer portal. And if you can hit on him, you can turn a roster around quickly.
Well, perfect, man. So I'm hoping that you're going to be able to break the Liam commitment.
I'll probably let Liam put it out. But no, I'll be right. I'll know when he knows. And I'll have something ready. So it's it's a great time of year for me. There's lots going on. Season's getting ready to start. There's going to be multiple commitments. So I'll be busy, but it'll be fun.
Looking forward to it, brother. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you in a couple of weeks when that commitment comes out either way to talk about the results of it.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Rob Cassidy. Make sure you give him a follow. He is the National Recruiting Director for Rivals on basketball, college basketball. We appreciate him joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. That's a lot of good information that I think Hoosier fans will enjoy, that he still is high on Indiana landing Liam McNeely and expecting that announcement to come within a couple of weeks. So there you go. Relax. I think that Hoosier fans can at least take a breath if they're worried about that. And he is still high on Indiana with Boogie Fland. And Mike Woodson is definitely not, those guys know a little bit more. Obviously, I would think that they know a little bit more, but they don't know for sure either. But if Mike Woodson has a really good feeling about Liam, he's going to go hard after Boogie Fland. as well, which he's not that he's not going hard after him, but he wants to win both of those. Winning one is good, is nice, but it's not outstanding. You win both of those, that's big. That hasn't happened for a while. So the Indiana needs to get that. They need to have that kind of cachet, that kind of national exposure, and that does just that. That gives a ton of national exposure when you have that level of elite players committing back after back. That's huge. And Boogie Fland, because of Jalen Hood-Schifino, I think Indiana is in a great position. Not that Kentucky hasn't had guys go to the NBA. Of course, they've had it more than anybody, but most of those guys were supposed to go. That's the difference. And I don't want to hear different. It was. And the people that don't like that I'm sorry. It's just a fact. Though, if you're already considered a potential number one draft pick before you get to college, that's not the same. Romeo Langford, rightfully or not, he was perceived as a number one draft pick. First round draft pick before he got to Indiana. So that didn't surprise me with that. But because of Jalen Hood-Schifino, I think Indiana continues to stay in a great place with Boogie Fland. And Mike Woodson has shown he can do a good job with talking to these players, their families. So it's going to be very interesting. The month of October, it could be trick or treat, baby, for Indiana basketball, but we'll certainly find out. It's going to be one of the other. So can't wait to find out which way that goes. Looking forward to it. We've got lots more Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming up here. Back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Coach, obviously another week where the offense really struggled. Didn't much during the game, was still kind of in doubt. Anything going? Just kind of where do you go from here offensively? Obviously, made a change of quarterback. Can we talk about that?
Well, we obviously use this bye week to make a lot of evaluations on things and find a way to get better. Without question. So, positions got to be evaluated. We got to be productive. We got to look at the guys that are making plays, not that we're not in every single position. And we got to do just a great job getting our guys refreshed and ready from the last few weeks and get ready for our final push. So obviously, we have to evaluate everything and find a way to score points, but we also got to play better defense. That was the game defensively was very poor and very frustrating. So, 2 explosive plays.
Sammy, then Zach. Coach, you go for it 6 times on 4th down, fake punt. What is the desperation level of this team right now?
Well, I think, the 4th downs where they occur, you're just trying to find a explosive place.
Sammy, then Zach.
All right, Jim.
Coach, you go for it 6 times on 4th down, fake punt. What is the desperation level of this team right now?
Okay.
All right, we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday. I appreciate you being with us. October 2 as we get the new month started. Great day already. Great Greg Straw joining us earlier. Don Fisher was not able to be with us. He'll be with us again another day this week. Dustin DePirick was also live from the Pacers Media Day, and Rob Cassidy, the national director for basketball recruiting for Rivals, just finished up with him. And as you hear that he's he's very high on Indiana and Liam McNeely still. So that should be good news for Indiana fans. And he expects that decision to be coming within the next 2 weeks. So stay tuned. We'll have that for you first, as he has been in contact. He just got back from Florida, as a matter of fact, last night, as he was down there with Liam McNeely. So we'll have something out on that as well, either today or tomorrow. So looking forward to that. Over the weekend, Indiana at Maryland, and it did not go well, as Indiana was beaten soundly, beaten early, and beaten often across the board. As from a statistical standpoint, they gave up almost 500 yards offense, 472 to Maryland, as the Hoosiers were only able to produce 321, 116 rushing yards, and 205 through the air, with two different quarterbacks, as Taven Jackson was replaced in, I think it was at the middle of the third quarter. And Brendan Sorsby comes in. He's 7 of 11, 84 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I'm thinking you're going to see Brendan Sorsby this week. I don't know. We'll see. But, or is it back to a quarterback battle again? Who knows? But we'll certainly find out. Here's Tom Allen was asked about going for it on they want for it on 4th down 6 times. And they had 17 third down conversion opportunities, only converting on 5 of those. So as you can see, that is what led to a ton of attempts on 4th down, where Maryland had 1. But 6 attempts on 4th down, whoo, that's a lot. That's a lot, mama. But here's his answer on what is the desperation level when you are going for it on 4th down 6 times in a game.
Well, I think, the 4th downs where they occur, you're just trying to find a way to stay on the field. The fake punt, obviously, we needed to score touchdowns. We beat them kicking field goals. We only scored 3 points up to that time, so felt like what we called was there. Obviously, came up short, so not a good decision. But at the same time, we need to find a way to get some momentum going for our football team. So just trying to be aggressive with that. That was a very aggressive call in that situation. Didn't work out. But, that game, we're down the way we were. We need to get something going right away to give us a chance to win the game. So that was the objective there, and trying to be aggressive.
Exactly, Mason.
There you go. There's your answer. Indiana gets a break this week with a bye week, so you don't have to worry about a loss. It also gives them 2 weeks to work on the offense with Rod Carey at the helm. It's going to be interesting to see if he makes a quarterback change or not. I don't know that he does or that he will, but I would think that he would. I think this offense needs something different. I think that Taven Jackson is a great athlete and is probably going to be a good quarterback, but his passing is just not there right now. His accuracy is just not there. I mentioned earlier, he was 59% for the game. As I look over it, Talia Tungavailoa, 71 completion percent. 24 of 34 for 352 yards, as he carved up the Indiana secondary and the Indiana defense. Not one, but 2 receivers with over 120 yards. One with 126 receptions for 121 yards, and then their top receiver, 7 receptions for 134 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he had one receiver who was able to get to the end zone 1 time. So it's going to be interesting to see what the changes are. Indiana has 2 weeks to make those changes, and they're off for a bye week before Maryland, or Michigan, rather, the trip to Ann Arbor. So that'll be very interesting. Then there's basketball recruiting. We just finished up with Rob. Man, that conversation had to make Indiana fans feel a little bit better. I know that they're still anxious and want to get that, but it's not a delay in his decision making. I don't think that there was ever a thought that he was going to make a decision at a certain date before these guys have to finish these trips. They come back, and I'm sure whether it's with their parents or someone, you have to go through the various options. And that's one of the things I asked Rob, because I don't think that you have to be winning, but you don't have to be winning a national championship. That's not the most important thing in the world anymore to these guys. There's too many variables involved. NIL is huge. And like he said, as Rob said, they don't have to be the same, but they just got to be close. They got to be close. And then NBA preparation. And Indiana checks both of those boxes. Winning, you know what? They theoretically, they should have won the Big Ten last year. They lost some games they shouldn't have lost. And they finished a game behind Purdue. But they had a good season. They made did not have the success in the NCAA that maybe they should have had, but they were there. They were seen. That's what matters. More importantly, getting a guy like Jalen Hood-Schifino, who was not considered a one and done when he arrived to the NBA, getting Trace Jackson-Davis also in the NBA. The NBA knows where Bloomington, Indiana is. Believe you me. They know where Assembly Hall is. They know that there are going to be players on there that they want to watch. That is not going to be an issue for Indiana players being seen, known, or heard of for getting to the next level, but also improving that. But they've seen that happens with Jalen Hood-Schifino. So we will find out how that goes. Hopefully we'll have that news breaking within a couple of weeks with Rob Cassidy. We'll certainly have him back on as soon as it does happen. And the fact that he feels so good about Indiana's position with Boogie Fland, it was a little bit of a surprise, only because I thought Alabama had really made a roar, but from his standpoint, I didn't get that feeling. I mean, they're in the position, but I did not get the feeling that they're in the top two. But hey, who knows? Could be completely wrong. And I had gotten that impression from a lot that came out last week. But I didn't talk to Boogie, and we'll find out. Obviously, but I'm not going to find out that one until closer to Halloween. So maybe he's going to do a trick or treat, and someone's going to get tricked and someone's going to get treated. But landing Boogie Fland, and Liam McNeely, huge. That would be huge for Indiana. And I still think that they have to get two of these top guys. It doesn't have to be two of these three. You know, it could be Liam and someone else. But I think that they have to land two big-time recruits, because a lot of people land one. Anybody can land one. Anybody can put a pile into NIL and land one guy. But they have to be able to land multiple. It just for the optics, for the success of the program, I think. But the optics, that is great optics for Indiana to be able to do that, to win, to have, especially if it was Boogie Fland and Liam McNeely. That's a recruiting win for Mike Woodson over Bill Self in Kansas and John Calipari in Kentucky. That's what I'm talking about with optics with these kids. They see that, they're like, oh, wow. It opens some eyes. It opens some eyes that IU has not opened in a while. So I truly believe that is something that Indiana needs to make happen. We'll still find out, but it's going to take a while. So you got to wait. I know that waiting is the hardest things, but 5F says we as fans got to stop thinking we are second or third fiddle. Well, yeah, and Nickel Stacking said it'll be a boogie night when he is signed. Purdue, let's see, that's a different one. I'm just trying to hit some comments from the Andy Moore Honda hotline here. Make sure, because I didn't get a chance. We had such a busy schedule today. I was not able to hit any of them. Fred says it'd be great to get all three in Bloomington. Yeah, it would be. It's not impossible, but it's not likely. For one, Indiana landed Mackenzie Mbako and Killel Ware with probably some very nice NIL packages. Xavier has to have probably a decent NIL package. And that, everybody on that team has an NIL package from Hoosiers for Good. Hoosiers for Good also has to come up with good NIL packages for multiple guys, these new multiple guys. Now, that will be eased because if Mackenzie Mbako is not here next year, there's one that you can just swap out. But as you see, as the elite talent grows on the team at the same time, so does the need for NIL resources. You can't just have, two. Do you think? I promise you. You look at Kansas roster. There's a bunch of nice NIL packages across the board, and that's what's it's gonna take that in Indiana. It takes that in. It's gonna take that anywhere. It has nothing to do with Indiana anymore. That's everywhere. I'm sure that they have done that, or they would not be in the position they are in with both Liam and Boogie. And it would be nice if we knew what those were, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be cool? Andy asked, how much would getting Liam help with Queen? None, I believe, because Indiana already has Malik Renew, who actually played with Derek Queen prior to his arrival to IU. So he's already been on the IU roster. He's already gone through it all. He can tell him everything. Liam can't. But I don't think that it matters where Liam goes. I think it matters about NIL. Well, like Rob Cassidy said, NBA's next. Maryland's not a loser. They just couldn't win on the road last year. And they've done a heck of a job recruiting. I'm telling you. They have a good group coming in. The Big Ten is going to be tough in basketball again this year because there's going to be teams that you don't expect. Ohio State was not what they should have been last year. Illinois, it will be tough as usual. It will be interesting to see if there's anyone that can really compete at that level with Purdue and Michigan State. Well, I know they can compete, but will Purdue and Michigan State be as good as we think that they're going to be? Because we know what they have returning. Well, we won't find that out for a while, and that's fine. It's a long season. Looking forward to finding all that out. But we've got half the football season yet to finish, too. What will the last half of Indiana season be now with the change in offensive coordinator? We'll find out. At least they have someone who has experience coaching who, if you recall, last year when he took over for the fired Darren Hiller, there was immediate impact on the line. Of course, that was with Dexter Williams. What happens with Dexter Williams comes back? There's so many questions with this Indiana football team. But we'll have to wait and find out. Cannot thank everybody enough today for being on the program. Of course, Greg Rakestraw, who just started joining us, and he'll be on with us each Monday. Don was not able to be along with us, but don't forget, Wednesday, you can find him 7:05 at Chop Shop with Inside Indiana Football and Coach Tom Allen. And I'm sure that's going to be a very interesting one this week. Dustin DePirick, appreciate him coming on live from Pacers Media Day up in Indianapolis. And Rob Cassidy, the National Director of Basketball Recruiting for Rivals. As always, appreciate all of his great information and look forward to talking to him again in a couple of weeks when we expect an announcement for Liam McNeely and his decision on where he will be taking his skills to play. But for the rest of you, appreciate you so much. Without you, we have no reason to be here. Thanks to RC for keeping us between the white lines. And until tomorrow, I am Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.